Okay, I believe we're live. So I'd like to say welcome to the Missouri Freedom Initiative. Today is the 10th of April, and it's the year 2022. Hey, gang, we got a lot of things to talk about tonight. But first, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us so far, has chimed in on YouTube. That's Voodoo Queen, Casey Rich, who is also in our Discord, Gary Ride, and let's see, that's it for right now. And now inside the Discord. So we have Ganai with us, also known as Scott, Casey Rich, Liberty Revolutionary, also known as Caleb. We have our friend John from the Missouri Liberty Report. By the way, we're partnered with John. If you want to see where his YouTube channel is, it's right down below in our description section as one of our partners. So you can always find his channel there. We have Rebel Cry, and Robert Smith is with us. So hello to everybody.
Hey, how you doing, Patrick?
Doing good, man. I know the title of the video tonight is attractive, and it's something probably everyone wants to say something about. But if you guys don't mind, I thought we'd cover some Missouri legislation first. We'll cover that pretty quick because, again, we had another week with not a whole lot going on because they were doing budget this week. So, but we can report on where everything's at, which is pretty much the same with one exception. And we'll get into that towards the end. So let me go ahead and bring that up on the screen. And we'll start over here at the Missouri House. HB 1613, Lavasco's bill, and that's for civil asset forfeiture. That one basically is still stagnant right now, but we're waiting to hear back from one representative and another person if our ideas to change it will be accepted. Otherwise, I think we should kill that bill, because that got slaughtered, and it's useless at this point in time. A very, very important bill, by the way, gang. Very important bill. Okay, on to the next one, HB 1992. That has to do with removing sales tax from food. That is still on the informal perfection calendar, could come up at any time. That's another one we need to keep making phone calls and sending emails on. Next, HB 2009. And this has to do with immunization of small children inside government indoctrination centers. And that one is also on the informal perfection calendar. That one's changed. That was on the formal perfection calendar, and it was moved to the informal calendar. We don't know what happened there. I've not been able to hear anything back on that yet either. We still need to call. And by the way, while you're calling, get some co-sponsors. If you don't see your representative on this list of co-sponsors, that's something they can do. I mean, this one's already got a lot of co-sponsors. And if you don't think that's a lot, look at any other bills that are going on in Missouri right now. Having this many co-sponsors is rare. Not as much as SEPA had. SEPA blew everything out of the water. SEPA had more co-sponsors than any legislation in the history of the state of Missouri, I'm told. But at any rate, that's where it's at. We'll move on to the next bill, HB 2118. And this one has to do with, basically we called it the, what did we call it again? And we ended up changing the name of it. But it's Stand Your Ground Enhancement. So this one is also on the informal perfection calendar at this point. We need to keep making phone calls and emails on this one as well, gang. Next one is HB 1462. Now, we haven't talked about this one very much, and we'll talk about it just a little bit more, but this has gone through the House now. This is now moving to the Senate. We will have an update for you on Thursday on this. This is a bill that basically allows for concealed carry on public transportation in the state of Missouri. Now, we have been asked in the past by some folks, why haven't we been carrying this bill? There is a very simple reason for that, because there was no way this bill was going to fail in the House. Now, our problem is getting it through the Senate. That's the real problem. So we're going to start tracking this bill now. It didn't need our attention like some of the others that we've been dealing with. The immunization bill needed our help. Getting rid of sales tax on food needed our help. This one really didn't need our help to get through the House, but it will need our help to get through the Senate. Okay, and also I'll link down below. Also, and I'll do all this linking while we're chatting tonight. The list of all the representatives, so you can actually give them a call. Because on Thursday night we're going back to the Senate again. There's a couple of things some things we need to do in the Senate. But keep in mind, gang, this week between now and Thursday, let's keep making our phone calls and our emails to our House members. Okay, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to add about Missouri legislation? Keeping in mind we didn't get a whole lot done this week because it was budget week, so the House was concentrated on the budget. But
Now,
go ahead.
now, does anybody know if the budget's been wrapped up for sure?
I heard that it was all but wrapped up. Actually, I heard on Friday morning it was done. The Senate was done on their side too.
So then we need to start seeing our showcase legislation start hitting the floor next week. Then.
That's correct. We need to keep making phone calls and sending emails, gang.
Saying that budget's over now. Let's get these in there.
Yep. Hopefully, I pray to God they do not go back to redistricting because I'm going to lose my mind if they go back to that again. We've wasted so much time on that this year, and nothing's been done. No progress has been made. But at any rate, I'm hoping they go back to legislation. That's what I'm hearing they're going to do in both the House and the Senate this week. So your phone calls and your emails are very much needed. And I will link down below in the description section of this video everything I just showed you. But I thought since there wasn't a whole lot to talk about what happened in the Missouri House or the Senate this past week because of the budget, that we'd incorporate another theme into the discussion this week, and it's an interesting one, and it's about the right-left paradigm. And I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this. And so, it's certainly not my opinion that reigns, or Casey Rich's opinion that reigns, or Liberty Revolutionaries. But I think one thing we could all agree on is the original political spectrum, when our founding fathers founded this country, was the right side of the spectrum, or for your point of view, the right side of the spectrum was no government, or the term that was used at the time was anarchy. And on the left side of government was totalitarianism, communism, fascism, socialism, that sort of thing. And then you have lots of little kinds of government in between, and in the center you have what's called moderate. Now that's the political spectrum that existed back when the founding fathers formed this country. It was all about the size of government. To them, they knew this, they saw this. And so they wanted to create a government in America that was small and didn't infringe on people's rights. So that was the main purpose of a constitutional republic. You have a set of founding documents, and then you elect officials that follow those documents for any legislation that they do. So, all right.
And don't forget that the whole idea was that the states were free and independent sovereign governments.
Yep, that's correct.
Created the federal system.
Yep, that's correct. So at any rate, I think taking on this, in a broader spectrum, this is where we get into a problem in today's politics, because people want to associate themselves, as either being Republican or Democrat, right versus left. But the right and the left on the political spectrum are not quite where you think they are anymore. That's the problem when we're talking about American politics. And I'll get to your comments here in just a moment. But let's take a quick look at a graphic here. Before I do that, Rally Day. Don't forget Rally Day, and I'll remind you before the end of the video. And that is the Missouri Carry Rally Day. It's every year in Jefferson City. It's April 26th. So come one, come all, bring your families. And that's a really wonderful event. I tend not to so much go to the rally. I might go to certain spots of it, but generally I go and knock on doors and talk to senators and representatives during this time. Okay, so let's take a look at the political spectrum as you see it on your screen right now. This is what they teach in schools. This is what I was taught, actually, when I was young, is that fascism, or in other words, Nazis, Hitler, were on the far right, and then on your far left you had communism. But the fact is, actually, where fascism belongs on the political spectrum is right between socialism and communism. Actually goes right here on the left. And if you look at fascism in the Webster Dictionary right now, it'll say totalitarianism. where they allude to that. They've changed the definition of the word fascism sometime in the 70s or 80s. But what fascism actually means is when businesses and government join together in an unholy union that is against the benefits or the will of the people. That's essentially what fascism means. It can mean government controlling business, or it can mean business controlling government, but either way you look at it, there is an unholy union between the two.
And it's usually bound up together by a central banking system.
Sure, absolutely. If you have that's a good point, Caleb. Thank you very much for bringing that up, because I didn't think of that right now. But when you have money that's based on nothing, it's much easier to have extremely large government. Extremely large government. If you have money that's based on something, it's much harder to get away with. So I want to show you, basically, if you do a search for political spectrum images on Google or on DuckDuckGo, you'll find almost all of them have that basic fascism to the right, communism to the left. But actually, here is the only political spectrum that matters. And this one is, like I said, this is kind of the way the Founding Fathers saw it. Anarcho-capitalism on the right. So anarchy, I realize I use that word a lot, but I know what the word means. Without rulers, without kings, without, people elected that have power over you. That's essentially what anarchism is. Anarcho-capitalism is understanding the free markets, using the free markets in conjunction with very little to no government. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have, founding documents. And that's not a conversation that I really wanted to get into tonight. How does anarchy work? Because that's not what we're about. We were never about that. We're about following the Constitution of the United States. That's what our organization is for. But at any rate, I thought you guys would enjoy a little bit of conversation tonight above and beyond what we normally talk about, especially since the House and the Senate have spent so much time on redistricting, and now the budget week, we've had that every year. So that didn't surprise me that was coming up. What surprises me is how little we've gotten done before budget week. And once again, that's because of all the arguing over redistricting. Okay. It's a good time to open it up to larger conversation, but if you don't mind, guys, I'd like to get to a few of the comments on YouTube real quick. First of all, a lot of people have joined us there, so I'd like to say hello to everybody. Let's see. HB 1992 needs to pass, Jonathan Ashley says. It will pass, but it needs us. It needs all of us to call and say, we want 1992 to pass. We don't need that tax money anymore. That's the thing. That's where people who are like us that want freedom really need to jump to action. When we see that tax is no longer needed, and it's been basically it's the overflow from the lottery is where a lot of this came from. So we don't need that tax in the grocery store. We're all feeling the pain in the grocery store, all of us, without exception. And so taking away the sales tax from food will be helpful. And here's why it matters. Because the Federal Reserve told us that inflation was transitory. They lied. It's not transitory. It's here to stay. Now, is it going to keep going up? Yes. How long for? I'm not sure. But when it stops, it'll stop at where it went up to. It's not going to come back down to where it was before. They've printed too much
it'll stop
currency.
when the dollar falls.
Something like that, probably. So let's see. Show Me the Truth says, too bad my state rep moved to Florida. Oh, my goodness. A Missouri rep moved to Florida? I wonder what's up with that. Let's see. Hopefully good news for tonight from BH. Actually, not really, other than, of course, conceal carry on public transportation moved through the House. Now we're going to start paying attention to it because it is going to the Senate now. Let's see. Everything seems to be stuck on Plocker's desk, says Gary Ride. That is 100% correct.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly right. So we're trying, and by the way, Casey Rich and I and many others have done marathon phone calls to Plocker. And we're not getting any phone calls back. I've not gotten any emails back from him either. Let's see. Show Me the Truth says Schatz has no chance of becoming Missouri U.S. Senator. That is most likely the case. Gary Ride says, my state rep, Dottie Bailey, said she would love to support HB 2009, but it's stalled in Dean Plocker's office. That's correct. Gary, that's where we come in. That's where Missourians come in. We have to put pressure on Plocker. And this is not the first time we've had to put pressure on Plocker to do the right thing. My wife has come up with a great nickname, Plocker the Blocker. And so I think we should probably call them that from now on. We tend to come up with nicknames for folks in Jefferson City. And Latanya says, hello, sorry I'm late. No problem. Better late than never, I always say. Show Me the Truth says Republican Democrat is basically professional wrestling. I agree, especially at the federal level. And Latanya says, I thought it was a technocrat. Well, technocrat, too, is when, these censorship companies that are, basically technology companies, get involved in government operations. Go ahead.
Yeah, technocrat is if you want to put that into a category, that would fit under fascism.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Subcategory of fascism.
Sure. Technocracy. We've all heard that term before. Show Me says, I'd be a minarchist. I believe in sub-government, but more liberty for the people. Show Me the Truth, that's where pretty much all of us are.
We'd be better off without government, but hey.
Yep. And Voodoo Queen says, and by the way, Voodoo Queen, who has done the email marathon, says she has not heard back from Plocker either. So she believes he's hiding in Big Joe's basement. And that may be the truth, too. Okay, so I'll tell you what, gang. Let's do larger discussion now about the right-left paradigm, the rhinos. Why people call them rhinos? It's because they're not conservative. They're not on the right side of the spectrum. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah. And I would argue that there is no Republican that is, if you're looking at the difference between anarchy and authoritarianism as the spectrum, there is no Republican that is in that category completely.
Yeah. And
not more.
Yeah. And it once again, that doesn't matter if it's, basically federal or state. But you do have people who run under Republican that are actually very freedom oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some that literally freedom is the last thing on their minds. And the Republicans are more likely to fall into the fascist category, and Democrats technically are more likely to fall into the communist territory or totalitarian.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that a lot of the Democrats fall in that too, because they into the fascist territory just because they, the whole transhumanism thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both parties give heavily to large corporations and subsidize them with tax money stolen from us. So
it is fascism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody calls it communism, but fascism is just a mutation of communism.
Sure.
That adds a central bank and corporate, partners.
I think communism's like a different type of advertisement.
What really, really sickens me is that people today that like to hate on capitalism or free markets, as the better term, look at that and go, "Oh, well, that's fascism." No. And then you kind of just think to yourself, and you see the level of indoctrination.
It's there.
Well, people can't almost help it because they've never grown up in a free market environment. So they don't even know that they're already against the free market idea because we're told that we live in free market environment, but we actually don't. It hasn't been a free market for quite some time. So these people grow up with hating something that they've never actually really seen. What they're actually seeing is the product of failed big government and, actually dictated markets, because they've all taken time to subsidize with our tax money, and they've taken time to pass regulation in favor of or done such favors to make it more favorable upon a certain demographic than another. So that's why people are growing up hating capitalism, or they're hating um, what they're taught in schools, because they're getting out and they're realizing that it was all a lie, and they don't know what to call it. So that's why it's important for your group. What your guys are doing is just amazing, getting it out there, helping educate people. And that's what people really need, is a true education, because most of us have gone to an indoctrination camp and we just don't know it yet.
Yep. There's several good things I want to say about Missouri right now. We have, per capita, I think we have more kids homeschooled in Missouri than any other state in the union per capita. And
Good job, parents.
yeah, that's a great job. And I'd like to go back to a point that
Yeah,
you just made a
that
second. Go ahead, Caleb.
that number also went through the roof over the last 2 years.
Yep. Yep. Well, it's actually since the quote unquote lockdowns. So,
Yeah.
so it'd be, and I'd like to bring up a point that you just made there. Robert, you've heard this ever since you were a kid. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Have you ever heard that before, Robert?
Yep, several times.
Okay. That is endemic of a free market system that no longer functions. That is fascism. What you know is more important than who you know. And so, but they teach you that today, and we accept it. For some reason, we've incorporated subconsciously that is part of doing business, is knowing people, because that's how you get business. Knowing business owners, knowing political leaders, and that
Well,
getting
knowing other business owners is true, but then it goes into fascism when you're talking about who you know politically.
Sure. And by the way, I've been a part of that process for a long time. I do bidding. I bid out projects. And so at any rate, I see it all too often in local government all throughout Missouri that unfortunately they go with a company that someone in that government agency is related to. So yeah, that's one too. That's not necessarily fascism, but
It still borders on that category, because that same level of corruption scaled up matches with the central banks and the elites.
sure. Well, I was
all
alluding
that
to
stuff.
nepotism, as opposed to, yeah, but nepotism is generally about in the workplace as opposed to contracting, I suppose.
That's why kind of the general idea of the founders was not that they didn't write in there that you could contract things out.
Yeah.
They didn't write in the Constitution, oh, you can contract things out. No, they didn't.
Yep.
That was never. It's not expressly delegated. It's not a power they have.
Yep.
At least not legitimately.
I think the distinction that we need to make with people is, they like to blame everything on capitalism, but the funny thing to me is, okay, you want to blame it on capitalism, but the first thing that people want to do is they say, well, we need to get government to come in and institute some kind of regulations on these businesses so they can't make so much money or whatever. It's like, okay, that's crony capitalism. That's what you already have. But every step in crony capitalism leads you to more fascism in the markets, because government's already holding hands with, we have all these public-private partnerships now. And if these politicians can keep getting these people to scream for the government to get involved, well, that's just another step forward to more fascism in the marketplace. So whenever somebody says capitalism to me sucks, I say, well, we don't even have it to begin with. It's crony capitalism. The last thing you should be doing right now is begging the government to step in and fix the issue, when during Obama's term, how he liked to just badmouth all these big corporations, and then come to find out GE paid zero income tax.
Yeah.
And during his term. So it's like, okay, that but of course, again, you have to take the time to do the research and follow the money, or the lack thereof. And it's same thing with the insurance. Insurance companies are evil, but we're going to let them come in, help write the legislation. And now if you go state to state, how many insurance companies do you have in each state, mate? 2, maybe. Most time now it's 1. You have one choice.
Yep.
So
Missouri
there's
really
your
has
government
one.
getting, yeah. There's your
better.
government coming in and solving the issue. They literally took your choices away and said, poop,
Mhm.
there it is. So I don't know this. Whenever they say capitalism, it burns my butt because it's like this is not anywhere close to capitalism.
No, it's not even remotely close.
And it's certainly not what the founding fathers intended. Warrior
not at
Class
all.
put in here, the founding fathers
It's
hated corporations since they distorted free markets.
Yep. There's something else too that I this is why, like, when I go to Walmart or any of those like large big box stores, if I get stuck going to one of those, I never through any of the last 2 years had any respect for any of their mandates or any of their crap because they are government owned effectively. I think that they are one of the biggest retailers that has the largest uh, money from the government sent to them. I mean, I forget what the actual numbers are, but I think it's like $900 billion a year, something like that.
That's right. To be honest, I strongly believe in property rights, but there's a point in time where if you're funded by the government, whether it be
It
fully or partially, you're a public entity. Well, you're
you're
paid
not
for by the taxpayers.
it's not private at that point because what is paid into that is stolen from the
I, w-
population.
I would agree. I would take it as like that as a libertarian. I'm strongly against companies receiving subsidies from that are taxpayer funded.
Robert,
Mhm.
do you know
Go ahead for it.
I'm going to ask you a pretty weird question here, and I know that it gets people in trouble when they talk about this, but ethanol. Do you know how much diesel it takes to make 1 gallon of ethanol?
I would say no.
Okay, the answer is 1.5 gallons of diesel to make 1 gallon of ethanol. Do you know the science or the chemistry behind ethanol versus diesel when it comes to BTUs, British thermal units?
No.
Okay. I know Caleb knows all this. I see you smiling, buddy. But he and I have discussed this, and he's smarter than I am, so he knows all this stuff anyway. But the fact of the matter is, ethanol has approximately 75,000 BTUs per gallon. Diesel has about approximately 150,000 BTUs per gallon. It literally has twice the energy, and it takes 1.5 gallons of diesel to make 1 gallon of ethanol. And that's the reason why we can offer it cheaper is it's government subsidized. That's why the corn industry has been going crazy for the last 20 years.
Yep.
That's one example, and it's a big one. But that's big money.
That's a huge waste.
Yes.
Huge waste.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
so what
Of
else do you
natural
expect out of
resources
government?
and money.
you know,
Right.
I'm not a big fan of Ted Cruz, and I don't like talking about federal politics. But I do remember when Ted Cruz went to Iowa, and I think it was in was it 2012 or 20? It was probably 2012, and he said, "You guys aren't going to like what I say here, but we have to shut down the subsidizing of the corn industry because of the ethanol
And the beans.
Yeah.
And the oil. And the cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, and then open up hemp and allow hemp to replace everything that it could have replaced 100 years ago before we had fascism take place. Because
Fascism took its hold in 1913.
Well,
Let me guess, Cruz didn't win in Iowa.
No, he sure didn't. Actually, Ron Paul won, as I remember, but they wouldn't let him have it. They gave it to someone else.
Yeah. The whole oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? The subsidy thing is a mess too because this goes into the farmer thing. I got a guy, he can't get on here tonight, but he could run through this entire thing and exactly the history of these subsidies and what they've done to farmers. But before the subsidies, farmers were really, really poor, and whatnot. But then prior to that, that was because the government screwed them out of everything they had in terms of, oh God, what's I'm looking for? Effectively, I can't go through all this because the buddy of mine who has this, who can go through this whole lot better than I can. He actually is a farmer, and but it's a convoluted mess, and it goes back to FDR, and then times before that with the um, basically selling off crops in the 70s and 60s and 70s to other countries at pennies, and forcing overproduction or destruction of crops to control the price, and then subsidies that it's a whole long mess.
And to my point, the corn industry being subsidized for ethanol. We've gone through lots of administrations, gang, conservative and liberal, and no one shut it down. So that goes into the rhinos having more control over the Republican Party. And you just, like I said, it's the same anywhere, but is it realistic to assume that we can vote out enough rhinos in DC when some of us think the election systems are not fair, anymore? So we have to watch for this in our states too, gang. This, the left, we know what to expect from the left. The right, well, unfortunately, they're a lot like the left. And but there are some really, really good conservatives out there in the state of Missouri here too. We have some really good ones here, just like there's one or two good ones in DC, and I do mean one or two out of 535. One or two. Thomas Massey's the only one who comes to mind right now. I know a lot of people like Rand Paul, but I have a hard time forgiving him for shutting down the Senate looking into getting rid of Obamacare. He did that with McConnell, and he did it on an open mic. And now I realize that was like 4, 5, 6 years ago, but I'm still having a hard time forgiving him for that.
Well, there's more than just that. The guy, I know he's Ron Paul's son, but he's kind of he's the apple that fell off the tree but then rolled down the hill that's about 5 feet. So
Latanya says, until we secure the election, then what can we really do? Work in our states, Latanya. That is the only logical conclusion. If you sit up and think about these things at night, like I often do, that's literally our only hope. Go ahead.
Also organize and disobey.
Yeah. I have to agree with Caleb on that too. It's just like, we're friends with Mike Bolden and the 10th Amendment Center. He put out a short this past week on YouTube, and basically he was stating the same thing he's been stating all along. Any gun law that's been done by the federal government or by states that literally take away your gun rights are totally unconstitutional. It could be anything from a bump stock to taking away a machine gun. It doesn't matter, and everything in between.
Shall not be infringed.
That's right. And so I've had some complex arguments with people in the past, and we're going to have one here in the very near future, I think, and it's over this whole thing with ballot initiatives. Because I understand the point of view. Now we're going to swing back into the Missouri stuff here, gang, if you don't mind for a second. Someone had brought to my attention recently that there was another YouTube channel out there, a guy who covers some Missouri stuff, and he is basically pitching for the ballot initiatives. And so we would like to have a discussion with him because we'd like him to understand our point of view as well. And I do believe that was Ganai who brought that to my attention. But here's how it is, gang. Anytime someone in government is doing something that starts restricting your freedoms, that unfortunately is an infringement on your rights. Period. End of story.
Flag.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that's a red flag of your representative, that if they start doing something that restricts your rights, that's a red flag that you should know your representative is veering off course.
That's correct.
Because, you just what is everybody credit Benjamin Franklin for saying those who trade liberty for security deserve neither.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're going to try to say that it's to protect us from outside influence and yada yada yada, but is this not a form? Is this not something that Republicans say a lot? that, you can't trade your liberties for securities.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just total contradiction of, what I've been seeing all these memes the last couple years. So,
Yep. So, Robert, let's try and play devil's advocate here for a second, because I don't want to hog up the show. I want more interaction here with some of the other folks, but you're the perfect guy to talk to about this because you're looking to go into a representative district here in Missouri. So the argument, as we understand it, is this: that the Soroses and the Bloombergs and, dare I even say illegal alien without getting shut down by YouTube, that come into Missouri that can affect a ballot by literally getting enough signatures to get something on the ballot is a threat to Missouri. That is the point of view now of the conservatives. So, but the point of the matter is, it's still an infringement on my rights if they're going to make it more difficult for me as a Missouri citizen to actually get something on the ballot because of external threats. Now, even if there weren't an external threat, it would still be an infringement. So, Robert, I want your take on this.
I'm completely against limiting any type of natural rights or constitutional rights, whether, from point A to point B. I'm pretty liberty-minded in the fact, and I just don't see the point of trying to protect us. I truly believe, I have faith in the constituents. Like, the politicians try to protect us from ourselves. People want to put down certain generations, but I truly believe that there's enough people out there that they could see or realize when something's good or bad for them. And you know what? I hate to say this, but people have the right to choose something that's bad for them.
Yep, they do.
I mean,
in a free society,
whether
you're
you
right.
disagree with it or not, and then that's where we go with, they could do what they want to do if it's bad for them, as long as they don't force me to partake.
Okay.
And that's where the boundaries stop. I can't be forced to do something I don't want to do. And I can't force somebody else to do something that they don't want to do if there's nobody being harmed or no property being damaged or stolen. And I'm totally against it. I can't even really, I don't really get what they're trying to say, because it's a bunch of poppycock to me.
Yep.
It's
and
just,
their arguments are weak on this. It really just does seem like some of the politicians in Jeff City are trying to gather up more power into the state capitol.
what's up with the fear? Oh, sorry, go, Caleb, go.
I was gonna say, if their arguments are really what their arguments are, then they should go right for the what's the word I'm looking for? The option we gave them, eh?
Yeah. And
Hey,
we've not heard back on that. Yes, go ahead, Scott.
Hey, because when I was messaging back and forth with that guy from that other group,
Mhm.
I told him, I said, for you to come out and say that these other organizations are bad and they're influencing, I was like, they've already influenced people in our state, organizations in our state. I was like, and I told them about, going up there testifying for, particular bill of whatever. And when you hear, a rep come out and say that they are for unions and lobbyists, and I told them, I said, the corruption's already here. And as I said, it's already within our state. It's not really so much the outside of organizations as so much as the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And once again, I mean, we could bring up again federal money flowing through corporations that masquerade as public entities, like, for instance, the Missouri Sheriff's Association or the Police Chiefs Association. Federal money flowing through those to law enforcement to affect, basically what goes on with law in the state of Missouri, having to do with law enforcement. A great example of that is what we're dealing with right now to try and get rid of civil asset forfeiture. This ended up being a much, much bigger battle than any of the smart people that I know anticipated, because they went after SEPA, but they didn't destroy SEPA like they destroyed the civil asset forfeiture bill. But that's the really big money, gang. Civil asset forfeiture is a lot of money to law enforcement. You know, and we don't need to go into the mechanics or the dynamics of that right now, but I think most people who have been in law enforcement before or know about seizure of property will know, you know, basically that they can keep that property in many cases and sell it. And even if they did it wrongfully, in many cases not have to return it or give some sort of replacement. So this is a problem in Missouri that needs to be solved. Every state has this problem. Missouri's trying to deal with it, and apparently the big how do I put it? The law enforcement going after SEPA right now through legislation seems to have completely stopped. It looks like their focus was stopping the ending of civil asset forfeiture in the state. But Caleb, I'm going to turn this towards you real quick here, buddy. Okay, so we talked about I'm not civil asset forfeiture, but we talked about the ballot initiatives and how they start taking away our freedoms, justifying it by saying we're trying to protect the people of Missouri, so that's why we're going to go ahead and start easing off some of this stuff. We're going to take away some of your rights for just a little bit. It seems to me that that's probably what they did with the NFA. Does that sound right to you? When they were taking away machine guns from the populace?
Yeah, it's the same idea that they try.
And of course, the reason I go to you, Caleb, is I think you probably know the statistics. How many civilians were killed with machine guns in America?
I'm not completely certain of the statistics, but I know it was pretty small.
I heard it.
I know machine guns at the time were incredibly expensive and almost unobtainable with the prices.
But it was mafia. Mafia is the one that had them. And so,
mafia never truly gave them up.
Yeah. So we could call the machine guns today, back then, the Tommy gun, you know, because that was the specific gun that was really available. It was easily manufactured.
No, that actually was not easily manufactured. It was the most expensive gun to be manufactured at the time. In fact, the M1928 Thompson submachine gun, it was extraordinarily complex for an open bolt machine gun.
Okay. Well, all of that aside, the fact of the matter is they said they were protecting the American public by taking away that freedom. Is that not correct?
Oh, they sure claim that.
Yep. So we have the same thing going on with ballot initiatives, folks. So the people up in Jeff City may claim that they're trying to protect our rights and our freedoms by preventing external threats, existential threats from coming through either financially or through sheer manpower by affecting ballot initiatives. And I don't buy it, gang. I haven't heard a single argument yet that will take me away from my opinion that I literally don't like the fact that they're literally making the requirements doubly difficult. Actually, in many cases, it's harder than that even. It's not just a doubling of the signatures. Yeah. It's not just
another thing too.
Go ahead.
As I said before, is that the suggestion that we made to them on how to change that bill to where it was acceptable. If they do not take that, then they sure don't believe in our rights.
Yeah.
No, they ain't worried about our rights, man. They want to make sure we can't get
It's
ballot
just the
access.
point. It's the point being though is that you hand them an option that would both cede it would fit exactly into what they claim they want to do to stop outside problems from adding to the Missouri Constitution more things to the Missouri Constitution that put more, whether it be fiscal or whatnot, requirements on Missouri, the state itself. Something, the suggestions that we made that possible and still keep what we deem to be removing power from government, yet they won't take it up.
Yeah, I can tell you why. It's all about raising that threshold.
I agree,
They're taking
Casey.
away from the people.
I agree.
That's it.
You have to think
Otherwise, they would have went for that, no problem.
Hey, Show Me the Truth says ballot initiative decisions should be left up to the people and not to the figureheads in Jefferson City. Well, technically, it is up to the people because it's still going to be on the ballot. We still get to vote on this. There was a discussion we had, at the beginning of this, what are we going to do if it goes through? We have to educate the people, is what we have to do, to let them know that it is much harder to get a ballot initiative done if they vote yes on that initiative. So,
Tell you what, if this doesn't go through this time, if this doesn't go through and we don't get that ballot initiative issue forced on us, we need to return fire.
Yes.
Know what I mean by that?
yes, I do.
Yes.
Meaning amend the Missouri Constitution to say, okay, now the House and the Senate can't make suggestions to the Missouri Constitution and put it in front of the voters.
Yep. Yeah, Latanya says the Missouri Constitution is over 200 pages long. It's ridiculous. Well,
It is, but a portion of that is a glossary and the index on the front, and then you also have the Constitution of the United States that is also pinned onto the end of it.
Yeah, and like I said before, I don't care if it gets thicker in a phone book. My right to a ballot initiative is more important.
Yep. And as Robert had so correctly said earlier, we as voters have the right to make bad decisions. So taking away our right
who's
to make
decide what's good and bad? People that vote.
Yeah. Well, no.
Simple as that.
I
I don't even like the use of that term, because you're basically
what about
kowtowing
Medicare?
to the.
What about Medicare expansion?
What about it?
That's
what the people want.
Yeah, but for freedom, it was a bad decision. It was growing government.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
I'm not going to get into arguments or anything. I mean, that's what people voted for. They voted for it for a reason. You should offer them something better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Understood.
I mean, I'm just telling you. I mean, I don't care what they vote for, because if anybody in government, representatives, senators, or whatever, think they're going to use that as a reason to take away our ballot initiative, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who are they to decide? I mean, the people ultimately decide what they want, whether you agree with them or not.
Yep.
And I can live with what they do more than I can somebody saying, we're taking away your power.
Well, the last thing you want to do is leave decisions up to politicians anyway.
Believe me. Look at the federal government, all right? Them and the corporations own them are making all the decisions right now. How's that working for us?
Yep.
Mr. State Rep and State Senator wants to shove these ballot initiatives down our throat. How's that working for us up there? That's all you got to say.
Yep. And so that's what we do, gang. Basically, this is it. I understand that point of view, and Scott will probably get us an audience with that gentleman that runs that other YouTube channel, because he's pitching for it, and the name of his channel is something like Missouri Against Rhinos or something like that. Scott, what was the name of his channel?
Still muted. There we go.
Watch.
Missouri Rhino Watch. There we go. Thank you, Scott. So that's the guy's channel, and but we look forward to having a spirited debate with him, and it'll be a very respectful one too. But I think I have yet to actually encounter someone that can make me understand that literally increasing the threshold for these ballot initiatives are good for Missouri citizens.
The suggestions we made to them just prove the opposite point, that it's very bad and their intentions are bad.
Yep. We have not heard anything back. Suggestions were made and were passed along. And so we've not heard back from people yet. I'm going to give them a little bit more time. I'm going to actually make yet another phone call asking them to respond. And if they're not responsive, then we can probably assume, like Caleb just said, their intentions are not pure.
I would just call them up and say, all right, well, if you don't respond, we're going to assume the worst here.
Yeah.
Like, the bad thing about that other channel, man, like they are truly on point with everything else. Like, they support 2009, they support the what is it, 1962 or
1992, the one that getting rid of the sales tax on food.
Yeah, and so like they're really on point with all that other stuff. In fact, like, they go through and give little crazy names to all these representatives and senators, and actually they even had a name for Parsons. It's just that one little area. But I really think that that the whole messaging back and forth, I think he was really just trying to get other viewpoints that he hadn't heard of or whatever before. Because did you get that screenshot I sent you the other day?
I did. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, because that's why in there he's like, yeah, these are all very valid points. And actually, I want to say I think they're going to talk about it this Friday on their little podcast or whatever. But like I say, as far as everything else, man, like they're pretty much like we are as far as being the political. So I don't really know if I don't know. I don't know if he's really for having these ballot initiatives or he was just trying to fish for information that he could use in his podcast.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll see what we could do to get a hold of him, and maybe he wants to have someone on his podcast, or maybe he'll agree to come on ours, and we could talk
Yeah,
to him about that.
those other things they support, they should realize they may end up having to go through a constitutional amendment to get some of the things they want.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why they be for these amendments, or I mean, whatever you call them, resolutions.
Once again, they don't care.
Yeah.
I was gonna say sometimes people.
You're right.
sucked up.
Ultimately, I don't, but I'm still a little curious why they would be that way.
Go ahead, Robert.
I was gonna say sometimes people can get sucked up into the fear issue. So like these people are pushing the fear George Soros, fear, this, fear that. And, sometimes people can fall into those traps.
Yep.
And so, they fall into those traps because they're just, I'd say maybe not as educated or maybe they don't feel about things the way that they should feel because they're not exposed to the right people. And that's why it's important to get out there and educate others on, hey, this is our right. If you're afraid of George Soros and all of those people, you should know that there's enough people out there that love freedom. And that's why we got to educate and preach freedom and teach each other to protect each other's freedoms. Why should we give away some of our liberty just to protect us from George Soros when our own state government harms us just as much as George Soros would? So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Why are we going to take away one of our weapons to use against them when they're inefficient and when they're failing to do their job? That's how we got cannabis, is we petitioned because our government wouldn't listen to us.
Mm-hmm.
Half the things we get through petition is because our government's not listening and we're trying to go around. And so get that guy and let him know about freedom. And I'm sure any person who loves freedom or can understand that their minds can be changed.
Yep.
Jimmy, the truth here goes, it's talking about the easiest way to get rid of the NFA is put in a tax bill, just like how they got Obamacare through. And I'm, on the back, I'm looking at another one too. They're never going to get rid of the NFA. They're not as blind as they want to play themselves off to be. They knock things out and insert things exactly how they want them in these 2,000-page bills. They do just whatever they want, and they don't give a flying about your rights or anything else.
You're talking the federal level, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wouldn't say that would be true of state government. I think state government may consider getting rid of that at some point in time.
Well, state governments, they can, but they have to blockade it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when it comes to the federal government, and really anybody, those alphabet agencies, they could care less about your life or about you. They hate you and they want you dead.
Yep.
At least compliant.
Yeah. So once again, gang, you'll understand why I brought the subject up tonight, was to talk a little bit more about kind of this ballot initiative deal. And once again, I have yet to have someone actually give me a cogent, concise argument to change my mind on this, because it does take away some of my rights. It does. It is constricting one of my rights. Remember the analogy that I used, gang, last week? And I was talking about, how much dog poop do you want in your brownies? They're still brownies, but they have more dog poop in them. And what they're doing is, instead of giving us brownies, the House and the Senate with that bill is basically they're giving us, brownies with about, 5% dog poop in it. And I don't want any dog poop. So I don't know how else to explain it, but that's how strongly I feel about it. But like I said, I am willing to listen to somebody who has a better argument than I do.
The problem is that they don't have a good argument when they're throwing out fear like they are. Oh my God, the liberals and the illegal immigrants and everybody else are going to do all these if all they have to use is fear, they have no good argument. They have no logical reason to do this other than the fact that they don't trust us and they think in their little brains that they are smarter than us and they know better than us. Anybody who had a good logical reason to do what they're doing would have already come out with it, in my opinion. That the amount of fear they're tossing out means they don't have a leg to stand on.
That's what I'm thinking too. Go ahead.
I
Rob.
agree, John. Like, you got to look at it. It seems like they're trying to take they're restricting Article 1, Section 3, and that actually makes us more dependent on them to get things done. And so they're trying to funnel us to them, and we really should not be going towards government. If you look, everybody who's rooting for more government, everybody who's campaigning right now, I want the constituents to pay attention to the people who are campaigning. Are the people campaigning on things that are going to restrict other people's liberties, right? Sometimes people might campaign on infrastructure. Well, that requires eminent domain and taxes. People might go and say, well, I support farm businesses, but they belong to a soybean association, which is special interest, and they're choking out hemp. We need to look at the people who are running. Are they campaigning on something that's going to restrict someone else's liberties? Because if they're running on something that's going to restrict liberties, they're not a freedom-loving, liberty-loving individual. They're authoritarian. So pay attention to those things. Pay attention to those subtleties on what people are campaigning on, what they're going to do, because a lot of the times they're campaigning on actually limiting or stealing from someone else to do something. And that's all I got to say on that one, John. So
Well,
yeah, you're right.
and to add to that, government is kind of predictable in these things. Is that look at the beer flu, look at the mass surveillance state, look at all these things. What did they do? They pounded us day after day with the message of fear. There's a terrorist under every rock and behind every bush, and if you walk outside without your face diaper on, you're gonna die. It's maybe not quite that level, but it's the same thing. They're using conservative or I shouldn't say conservative. They're using rhino talking points, trying to scare everybody away from the liberals, which you should be a little afraid of the Democrat Party. But they're going into such an extent to get you to feel as if you have to trust them to do what's right for you. And why anybody in their right mind would trust the government to do what's right for them when we have numerous examples of how everything they touch turns to crap? Why would this be any different? I just don't get the mentality behind it.
Every government
Everything.
campaign is based off of fear. Go back down to cannabis. Fear. What is it going to do? It's causing illegal, illicit activity, and white women are going to run off with, other people other than white people. And that was a real campaign ad against cannabis and hemp. They really use race. They have fear of race. They use fear.
That's
They've done it for
literally
hundreds
all
of
the
years.
reefer madness thing was.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, the government just has fear. Don't listen to it. If they've always been wrong, they'll always be wrong.
Okay, I got a few things I got to say here, and then I'm going to address something in the comments section. Ben Franklin, after the signing of the Constitution, had said, "This Constitution and its imperfections, if there are any, may last for a term of years and only end in despotism." You know, and he was very much right. And going into something in the comments section here, Latoya King says, shouldn't we be fighting a legal way to throw off this government and start over? I mean, federal and state, both are crappy. In all honesty, you can do that at any time, but you need enough support. You need to be able to exit the system and compromise the dollar. Compromise it to the point where the government is useless and incapable of enforcing anything.
This year, it's going to be on the ballot to change the
I'm not
Missouri
just talking about
Constitution.
that. I'm not talking about a vote. I'm talking about people exiting the system. In many regards, because even that situation you're talking about, you could get delegates for that, for the Missouri Constitution from Kansas City, St. Louis, and then you would wind up having other corrupt ones that get mixed in from the more red areas of the state, and it will corrupt the hell out of it. You could run the chance of stripping it of Article 1 or Article 1 Section 23. You could risk stripping it of Article 1 Section 3 or Article 1 Section 2 or Article 1 Section 1, any of those. Particularly in today's political narrative and the cattle of the population that have been on the government tit for so long, or the ability to, lack thereof, the ability to live without government and live through the indoctrination centers, we'll just go right for it. And the only way, I mean, really, in my mind, if all else fails when it comes to trying to fix your state, the only other thing you have, at least as a peaceful option, is counter economics, to split from the system, to break down the system by not participating in it to a point that it fails under its own weight.
And that's using alternative currencies such as Bitcoin, gold, silver, and then
It doesn't even
standard
have to
barter.
be that. You change the intermediary that you use. You just don't use the US dollar. You don't pay their taxes. You don't, because if you don't use their dollars or something tied to their dollar, which by the way, cryptocurrency in many regards is tied to their dollar, if you don't use that, they can't tax you like that. They can't get your income taxes. And when they can't get your income taxes, they fail. They collapse. Because they can't feed their system. They can't launder that fake money through you to give it value. A fiat currency is strictly based on its ability to launder it through a system to give it value.
Yep.
And if it does not have that, it will fall. It will collapse. And the people that separate from the system and have their own economy, they will feel nothing of it. The dollar will just disappear.
Yeah.
The government that runs off of it will die. And then you better be ready to defend that. Because a government in its collapsing state, as an empire falls, it becomes dangerous.
Gold and silver, my friend. I mean, that's definitely a way to go, and that's why gold and silver is so heavily demonized by the federal government and by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve doesn't demonize it; they say it's an ancient relic of ancient times when people were small in their thinking. No, it was actually a really good way to do trade, is what it was. But I digress. I want to get to a few of your comments here. Mad Mom said, I used cash at a smart vending snack at work tonight, got gold $1 as change. Bonus points. Are you serious? It actually gave you some kind of gold?
No, they're the oh god, what's
Dollar
I'm looking
coins.
the dollar coins, the newer ones like from 2010 and whatnot.
Oh, they look kind of like gold, but they're really coppery. Yeah.
They are solid copper though.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's a metal. It's a
Yeah.
metal.
Hey, copper is worth more than the dollar. I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Latanya says, I'm seriously trying to figure out. Only thing I've come up with is personally becoming a Missouri national versus Missouri citizen. Yeah, that's that's something that I think a lot of people are thinking about. But in Missouri, we have it better than many other states. Let's see what we could do with our state legislature first. And you win some and you lose some in politics. I didn't get my gold and silver bill in. gosh darn it, I tried so hard. I spent so much time on that sucker. But at the same time, because of all that crap that was going on with redistricting, the guys I gave it to couldn't get it out. So, but if we had that bill in the state of Missouri, you guys don't understand the importance of that bill. In many ways, it's actually more important than SEPA was. But I think we can get it through, and I think it will have bipartisan support, that gold and silver bill. So we'll have to do it next year. So hang in there, LaTanya. I don't think you need to get rid of your citizenship or anything. Yeah, we just change the rules as far as the state of Missouri goes. That's what we do.
And see that also that at least at this point in time just gives other angles for them to harass you. The only thing I can say is that yeah, we do need to focus on trying to fix the legislature here and fix things. But hang on a second. There we go. Let's do that for a second. We do need to try to fix a legislature, but while we're doing that, we need to form these communities. We need to have this separate system, a parallel system that does not use the dollar. Because if you don't, when, not if, when that dollar collapses, you need to be able to be shielded so it won't affect you.
Yep. Agreed. And that's the whole point of the gold and silver bill
Because
that we had. Go ahead.
If you reject their intermediary, their currency in between, because people think that a currency or how many dollars you have is your wealth. No, your wealth is only what you hold. It's what you have in your assets, whether it be gold or it be your chickens that you have in your front yard or your house or your land. Those are your assets. That's your wealth. And what you can trade with that, or what you can use yourself or agreed upon as an intermediary for that trade. And if you don't use the government's or the Federal Reserve's intermediary, they cannot do anything about you, except for basically enact violence against you, and then that will look very, very bad for them.
Okay, sorry about that, Scott. We had to temporarily mute you here. We had a lot of noise coming out of your mic.
Oh, no, you're good.
Triple T says, name one state better than Missouri. Actually, you'd be hard-pressed to do so. When you take a look at everything we have going on here with all these organizations that we have here in the state of Missouri now, not just ours, there's many others. They have different focuses in many, cases. But the fact of the matter is we have more liberty-minded people here with freedom on the brain than most states do per capita. Just like we have more homeschooling per capita than any other state. That indicates free thinking. That indicates that enough people understand that there is a problem with the indoctrination centers that we have here, and that we can't solve it without pulling the federal money. And dare I say it, there's an issue with teachers' unions too. Now, I know that won't make me very popular with some people, but that's federal reach into the public education system as well. So,
and really what needs to happen is any kind of public service, unions need to not exist within them.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'll tell you, I work at a union factory. I mean, the factory that I work at is union, and one of my former coworkers, her and I got into a conversation one day, and I said, I know it goes against logic for the union. I said, but I would think that if they're about helping the middle class and everything they say they are, then I would think that they would look more at a libertarian. And she said, yeah, but libertarians don't like public unions. And I said, well, there's a good reason for that, because they just literally steal money from taxpayers left and right, willy-nilly. And then during the beer flu, what did we see? They literally just, they wanted to be paid and not do anything during the school years. All these things they didn't want to do. And public unions are just, again, the beer flu, I think, was if you needed an example of how awful they are, and then you look at New York City, where if a teacher is suspended, they literally get to go into the school and they're all put in a room by themselves and they just sit there and I don't know, they do crossword puzzles or whatever. Still get their pay. Every month, they still get paid their wages while they're going through this rigmarole. There is no, well, you're suspended and you're not getting paid. No, because of teachers' unions in New York anyway. Yeah, they literally sit in a room. There's a group of there could be 10 of them in there sitting in a room doing God knows what, still collecting all their pay. That is theft. And yes, public unions are really, really good at stealing your money and then using the legislature or certain politicians to benefit them with pay and all and the other benefits, and literally may not be doing anything at all. And good Lord, doesn't that sound nice? If I could just have a job where I could just sit at home and stare at the walls and somebody would say, "Hey, here's your paycheck," and be like, "Really? I get paid to do nothing?" Oh my God. I sound like Joe Biden right there, didn't I? It's not right.
Damn, I
Oh,
must have been the wrong union because I basically had to work to my back, my hip, both my knees gave out.
Yeah. Well, you're
Well,
talking about the
I-
difference
I
between,
get, man, I wish I could have sat around some more, And
yeah,
I'll tell you another thing. Working in a union in Kansas City, I was making 20 as a laborer. I was making $26 an hour plus pension benefits. I could drive out to what's that place in Kansas where Jayhawks play? What's the name of that town?
you're also talking about the
I
difference
could drive
between,
out there where it's non-union. It's $10 an hour with nothing. Oh, but hey, I didn't have to pay union dues. Please.
you're
Yeah.
also talking, hey, you're also talking about the difference between private unions with actual companies and whatnot versus public service unions, as in cops in schools. There's a big difference. The public unions getting taxpayer money.
and because I won't lie. I mean, where I work, if there was no union there, I would be making half the money. Absolutely, and we'd be working 7 days a week, nonstop. And as we drop dead, they would just step
Yep.
over our body with a new person to
And
put in our place. Absolutely no doubt about it. So I don't want to sit here and say that I don't think unions don't have a place, because I believe they do. But my problem is
not in
because
public service.
right, it's they get so much of a stranglehold. And again, I don't know how the what is that, the immunity thing that the police have. I don't know if that's tied, if that's just one of those things that exists in law enforcement, or if that's because of police unions, the qualified immunity.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Qualified
that's tied to.
immunity.
Yeah, I don't know if
That's actually a hybrid. That is tied to both the unions and the federal courts.
okay. But I private unions, like I said, in my situation anyway, I know that I would probably be making I'd be making $13 an hour right now, and I'd be working 7 days a week. And I get it. I could go look for work somewhere else. That's what Well, if you don't like the job situation, go get a job somewhere else. But there is
Yeah,
a
it
point of how
says
much
all the
crap.
rich corporations and businesses.
Yeah,
Well, you're
it's
also talking about the difference between, say, an actual private company that the union contracts with the company
right.
versus public, where the union effectively just controls the boards and the legislators around it.
Yeah, and we don't get, and the taxpayers don't get any say. They're
No,
there meeting with if it's a city, it's the mayor and the board of aldermen, and the taxpayers absolutely have
because
no say in what happens with pay,
because
benefits, any of that.
in a private union, you have the actual workers themselves that are all members, and they contract directly, where the
Yep.
ones who are affected are the ones making the contract. Then you have public, where the ones who are not affected have no, or the ones who are affected have no say, but the ones who just simply work in there and are effectively um, supposed to work on behalf of the people that they serve are the ones making the decision when it does nothing to serve them.
Well, I agree they shouldn't be making public policy. They should just be working on wages, working conditions, and stuff like that.
That's
But
what they
yeah,
were originally
like
intended for.
police unions and stuff like that, they don't need to be making our public. They don't need to be making or breaking our laws.
Yeah,
Any
once
sheriff associations or anything. But see, I think we need to get clarify that. I mean, I'm sure we can understand that, but other people watching, we need to make that known. All right, ain't like you're trying to stomp out a union. What you're trying to do is save your power as a citizen and decide who makes the laws, and that should be us, not other entities.
It all goes back to who contracts with the one who pays the bill. To the employees. You have a teachers union, and they contract, or they basically form a union amongst themselves and try to affect the legislature, and then the people foot the bill. When you have a private union, it's the corporation, or whatever company, or however big or small, or franchise, even basic franchise. It's the people that actually work there that contract to affect their own pay and their own, and the ones footing the bill is the owner of the company, not the taxpayer.
Yeah, it would be interesting to try to get some kind of legislation like that passed that says, okay, we're fine with public unions, but if you want, if it's in a city, let's say the city of St. Louis, the teachers union wants a pay raise, that has to go on the ballot. It's not there, the mayor just
You-
caves and says, all right, we're working it out. The taxpayers literally have to approve the pay raise for the school districts and for the teachers in that union. And I would absolutely not have an issue with that.
It's already the case, but see, then you're talking about, you'd almost have to write something where it defines public union versus private union,
Right.
and then specifically address that public unions are in no way, shape, or form in any official capacity, or the employees thereof in any official capacity, to have any effect in the legislature or any political positions. This is
And
what
they
I
would
was saying about
fight
police
that like
unions
hell.
before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they would, but then it would expose them more. And you see who are actually dealing with.
There was a question brought up in the chat here about, by the way, switching tracks here real quick, about doctors in Missouri. And that's from American Patriot, who's looking to move here from Maine. And I'd say we have just as good a doctors as anyone else has here. I don't go to the doctor very often. It is exceptionally rare. I don't even go for yearly exams or anything. I go to the doctor when I'm really sick. And there's reasons for that. I don't like or trust doctors a whole lot. LaTanya King has a horror story that she shared in the chat. I won't go over it right now, but you guys can read that in the YouTube chat. But there are good doctors here in Missouri, so that's not an issue. And sometimes you'll have to go up to St. Louis for a specialist if you're in the Springfield area. Many people in Springfield are aware of that. That's for a specialist. But I'd say I grew up in Minnesota. I think the medical industry in Minnesota is probably a little more advanced than what we have down here in Missouri. More cutting edge stuff going on up there. More university hospitals, so there's more doctors being trained in Minnesota than there would be in Missouri. But otherwise, I'd say we have probably a fairly decent medical community here in the state of Missouri.
I will add one thing to that, and between my wife, my son, and my mom. Now, this is just in my area, so I'm not saying this is across the state, but in my area, you go to call the doctor's office and make an appointment. 9 times out of 10, you don't even get to see a doctor. You're seeing a nurse practitioner. It's becoming absolutely ridiculous around here trying to get and actually see a DO or an MD. It's the nurse practitioner's in, and we've had a couple of strange occurrences. Like my daughter a few years ago, she had a fender bender, and she ran off the road into some trees, and then the steering wheel was on her leg, so she had 2 nice contusions there. the nurse practitioner does an ultrasound. They're like, "Oh, I think we see a blood clot." So, of course, me and the wife are super worried. So they send us up to a specialist up in Jeff City, and she's like, "It's just a deep bruise. It'll be fine." She literally said, "I don't mean to speak ill of nurse practitioners, but this is the problem. They know just enough, but because of the way they're trained, they jump to the worst conclusion right off the bat and it scares the bejesus out of you, and then you've got to work your way down to it's not that, it's this. But it's been really hard to see a doctor, and we've got 3 clinics here in town, and every time it's a nurse practitioner. It's like, what happened to all the doctors? Where'd they all go? But I do know, because of the beer flu and the way things are handled, a lot of doctors are going independent, which I absolutely love, not taking insurance and
Yep.
saying, some of them have a monthly subscription plan, basically like a membership. I would love to see that expanded on.
It means they're not beholden to insurance contracts, which means when they're not beholden to insurance contracts, they don't have to charge the fake price.
Or they're not beholden to hospital administration. That was actually forcing doctors to basically, once a diagnosis was made, they had no say in treatment anymore. There was a protocol they had to follow that was set forth by the CDC and the WHO. And that led to a lot of people expiring maybe a lot earlier than they would have normally.
Come on, man. Let's not bring British bands into this.
I'm sorry, man. I'm trying to avoid the YouTube algorithms. That's what I'm doing. I didn't mean to be cagey with that, gang. I think most of you understood what I was saying. Let's see.
You got him nervous.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Hey, I've been looking for an excuse to make that joke, though.
So. It was a good joke. And also, I want to say something that's just because it's kind of cool. Aurora Borealis is on the YouTube side right now in the chat. And apparently she grew up in Minnesota too. So, yep. My wife and I moved down here 25 years ago, right after we got married. We both knew we did not want to be in Minnesota anymore. The taxes were too high. It was too cold during the winter. So we came to the Springfield area. So... Okay, all right, guys, we're getting close to an hour and a half now. So is there any unfinished, I'll tell you what, the unfinished business that I know of on my side right now is to once again talk about these bills. And by the way, the description section has been filled out during the chat, as I said I would do. If you go down to description section now, and if you refresh, basically, if you've been watching from the beginning, you'll find basically the Missouri House roster and all the bills we care about. And once again, we're calling on them to actually do something with these bills, particularly HB 1992, HB 2009, vote yes, please, vote yes, please. HB 2118, vote yes, please. 1462, actually that one is going into the Senate now, so that's not something we necessarily have to worry about at this moment, but on Thursday we'll touch upon that in greater detail. And also one thing I was totally remiss on that I also did while we were live tonight, Casey Rich's SEPA Central is listed now in our partner section, and forgive me, Casey, for never putting you down there. I guess I just totally forgot.
I didn't even know about it. I was just doing my own thing.
Yep. Well, KC has his own channel where he covers SEPA, not only for the state of Missouri, but all other states as well. So if you guys are interested, basically take a look at it. There's a link down below in the description section that covers KC channel as well. And, of course, we have John with the Liberty Report as well. He's also partnered with us. His link is forever down there on every video as well.
Yeah, my channel's also been pushing HB 2118 real hard too.
Yep. So
especially with all this other SEPA legislation kind of getting killed off in the other states, I've been pushing hard for 2118.
Yeah, that's Go ahead, Ganai. I'm sorry.
I reached out to that other organization. He said that he would be willing to speak with us.
Wonderful. Okay.
And he said he has Discord, so I gave him our group name.
Great. Send him an invite, and then basically I'll teach you how to do that offline here. But we'll
Okay.
send him an invite, and hopefully that'd be wonderful. Would love to talk to him on Thursday because we're talking about the Senate. So that'd be a great time to have him in. He will be treated with the utmost respect in our group. I want to hear his arguments, and I would sure like him to hear mine. And KC Rich is very well versed in this as well. But once again, gang, we're talking about a little bit of dog poop going in our brownies here. A little bit of freedom being restricted. It's not a lot, but it is some freedom being restricted. And should we put up with that for the thought of an existential threat? Is that what we're dealing with here? Or are we dealing with politicians that are trying to scoop up more power, take it from the people of Missouri and bring it to Jefferson City? I mean, that's something we all have to think about. Any way you slice it, some of our freedoms will be removed if they get this done. But once again, it's not how they vote in the Senate that matters. It matters that the people understand what they're doing. That's what matters in this. It's a great example. It's a microcosm of many other things. We just talked about, Caleb and I talked about the NFA and how they probably sold to the American people. We're taking away machine guns for your safety. Will that open the door to further legislation to take away your gun rights? That was the very first. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's what the NRA said to people.
Yeah.
They supported the National Firearms Act.
Yes, they did. So, okay. All right. Gotcha. I'll open it up again. If you guys have any further questions in YouTube, let us know. Any comments you want us to read, let us know. Let's see. LaTanya says our president of the Nixa area farmers market is from Minnesota, and she makes the best meat pies I've ever had. Hey, that's great. A lot of wonderful people come from Minnesota, so it's not an anomaly.
I was actually just talking to somebody else from Minnesota earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Gary Ride said earlier that, or asked, who can afford a machine gun these days? Definitely not me. Well, actually, ironically enough, there were some. Okay, so pre-86, there were some tubes that just basically blank tubes that were registered as machine guns.
Mm-hmm.
Several thousand of them. I mean, probably like 10,000 of them. And they could be modified to any style or caliber you wanted, but they still exist and they're pre-86.
Yep.
So apparently this guy got in some legal trouble for a while and whatnot, and then somehow the machine guns basically got transferred down to somebody else in the family, and then they started selling them. And if I remember correctly, you can get those for anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not bad, considering the fact that an M16 lower is about $20,000 to $22,000, and
but how much are the tax stamps? I mean, how much federal money do you have to give them before you can own something? Before you actually start paying for something to own?
$200.
Is that all it is for a machine gun?
Yeah, it's a $200 tax stamp. It's the same across the board for any
okay.
For any NFA item. The only difference is machine guns can't be made after 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Transferred privately.
Got you. Triple T Tony sums it up pretty good right here in the YouTube chat.
Yeah.
Once you give up one thing, they will take more, and you'll never get it back. Never. Mm-hmm. That's right, Triple T. I agree with you on this. Go ahead.
They will never give it back, but you can take it back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, is preventing them from taking it in the first place is what we're trying to do right now. So, and we'll start with the Senate, and if the Senate decides they disagree with us and they want to put it through to the voters, we'll make sure to start a campaign to make sure that the voters understand, and we'll get all the liberty organizations in the state of Missouri to carry the torch with us, to educate the people, say no on that ballot initiative when it does come out in the ballot in November if it gets through the Senate. The House has already passed it.
Yeah, HJR 79. If that passes, that's supposed to make all the ballot initiatives after that have to be put for public scrutiny. That's fine, but you know what? They're not going to mention the ballot language if they're raising the thresholds, like percentage of voters, percentage of percentage of districts and things like that. How come they're not making that clear for the voters? Oh, wait, they're going to wait until they pass their stuff first.
Yep.
And then So I mean, that tells you something right there. I mean, it just all comes back, dude. They're trying to crush our power as citizens. That's it.
Yep.
They get mad at me and say different, but I mean, come on. All you got to do is read it. It's right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, gang. Well, I think unless anyone has any closing statements they'd like to make based on the conversation tonight, let's see. I'd like to say this. Casey Rich puts out videos whenever there's some news. And then on the Missouri Freedom Initiative here, we're going every Thursday and every Sunday night, and I'll put out single videos once in a while. John with the Missouri Liberty Report is on live Friday nights, by the way, at 6:30. So he keeps to that schedule. So that's pretty much when you can see us. And as far as I know, besides this one gentleman, we're going to try and get him in for Thursday night, by the way. So that'd be just awesome to get him in. And yep, and he's got a Discord account. So chances are he'll be able to join us right here in Discord. So guys, we could actually talk to someone who is actually pitching for the other side. He wants the ballot initiatives to go through. So we can have a true debate. And once again, he'll be treated with the utmost respect. I mean, I respect anyone who wants to come in and talk to us in our Discord here. Everyone. Okay. All right. So guys, anything else you want to add for tonight?
I was going to add in that, one, don't forget to bully and ridicule your local political parasites. It's always a wonderful thing to do. Second off, it is your right and it is your duty to disobey unjust laws and exit the system and reject their currency.
There you go.
Jury nullification's a real thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Nullification in general. Jury nullification doubly so.
That's to me, the jury is one of the strongest issues if you want to combat a unjust system. You don't have to find that cannabis charge guilty. You don't have to find somebody guilty of no crime or if there's no victim. You can nullify it just by voting not guilty. And it's a long forgotten thing because back during the Whiskey Rebellion, they were trying to try people for not paying taxes, and they couldn't get anybody to be voted guilty. So, if you want to stand up, starts in the juror box. Go to the juror box whenever you're called.
By the way, which that whiskey tax was not authorized by the Constitution.
I don't know how you have a war and the first thing you do to justify paying for the war, you got to pay for the wars, you do a tax.
On the very thing, one of the very things you fought over paying taxes on.
Right. It seemed a little silly. There's a little bit more to it. It's those damn Federalists, to be honest. So.
Yep. Triple T says paying a tax stamp for every NFA item is not taking it back. So that's correct. We've never been able to reverse that.
Hey, I'm not going to say my suggestion on here, man.
Yeah, I understand that. But yep. So just remember, I meant literally.
It's free to say nothing.
Yeah, it is free to say nothing. There you go. And sometimes it saves you a lot of money too. But I will say this, gang. I want to thank each and every one of you who participates in these events, who makes phone calls, sends emails, because you saw what we were able to accomplish statewide with SEPA. Now, we're trying to do that with some other bills this year. We're trying not to overwhelm you, but I want to remind each and every one of you that the fight for liberty begins or ends with you. Each and every one of you. This is literally up to us. When we elect people into office, we hope they will do the right thing. We're finding out more and more that we need to encourage them constantly to do the right thing. And that's nobody's fault. That's just, basically the system and the way it is, and in many cases, lack of character for people we elect into office. But it's up to us to continue pressuring them to do the right thing. And the right thing is literally staying constitutional. I'm not talking about right, left. I'm not talking about religion versus no religion. I'm talking Constitution here. The Constitution has very strict limits on government. The Bill of Rights has actually everything we need to be a free people. Yet they infringe on our rights and they overstep their boundaries, the limits the Constitution sets for them all the time. So it's up to us to stop them. And it's up to us to make the phone calls, to send the emails, to make the visits, to our local politicians. I don't recommend, delving into D.C. It's worthless anyway. It's just a waste of time. Don't waste your time. Work within your state. Your state, you can affect change. It can be done. For those who say, oh, no, it's too difficult, it's, look what we've gotten done here in the state of Missouri. We got a lot of wonderful things done. SEPA's the obvious, one, but we've gotten all kinds of wonderful stuff done here. We've talked with Dave Plemons about our abortion laws here in the state of Missouri. And we're going head to head with, for instance, Texas. And that's something that we'll talk about probably towards the end of this year again, because we should have some statistics for you that'll blow your mind. Where Texas has a stronger abortion law, ours is a little looser, but we have a caveat with ours, which is the ultrasound. And we'll see, basically how that works out, But also, I do want to say I'm going to probably do a standalone video with a good friend of mine, Conjecture, sometime in the next week. And we're going to talk about the exodus from the blue states. And we have a specific, it's one we've been planning for about 6 months, and we put together a lot of data over 6 months. So we thought we would do that, but that'll probably come out sometime this week, a standalone video. It won't be a live one. Okay, all right. So, guys, I've said my piece here. Anyone on YouTube have anything to say? Anyone in the chat here want to wrap up with anything?
Let's see here. Triple D Tony says you can be sentenced up to 10 years in prison for having a suppressor without a tax stamp, but a child molester gets less than 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
and sometimes just probation, Triple T.
uh-huh.
Sometimes just probation. I've actually seen that a couple of times here in the state of Missouri.
Yeah, that's just messed up.
Mm-hmm.
That's because we got a lot of we have some pedophiles in government.
That's probably.
Just about that many. Just
Are you
a
sure it's
handful.
not like that many?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going
Maybe
like
a little
this
more
or
like
something?
Yep. And to avoid the algorithm problems, let's just call them Disneys from now on.
Oh yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We'll just call them Disneys.
He's asking me to send him an invite.
Oh, better
Oh,
be careful
gotcha.
about. Hey, wait. Better be careful about saying that too, because you start calling them Disney's, and then Disney will come after you for copyright.
Yeah, copyright infringement or something. Oh, I can't wait for that one. Yeah. Okay. All right,
Careful.
Disney, you have it right there. I just did my Mickey Mouse impersonation. Let's see if they come after us. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap her up. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. Remember, please do continue to make your phone calls and send your emails, especially this week as the Missouri legislature is getting back to the normal work. So please do. If you're leaving a message, that's fine. They get those as well. I tend to leave a voicemail if they don't answer the phone, and I send an email on top of that. So that's what I recommend all of you do if you don't mind. You guys know the bills we're talking about. They're right down below in the description section. And hopefully you guys have time to join us Thursday, because it sounds like we're going to have a special guest and possibly a debate over the ballot initiative issues. So that should be fun. Okay, gang. Thank you again for joining us. May God bless each and every one of you and all of your family members. I love you all, gang. Thank you for hanging with us for an hour and a half. Take care.
Carpet bomb those phones.
Yep.